Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining me from. Thanks for taking time from your busy schedule to be with me during this hour to share with you how you can actually get complete ALM functionality from your Azure DevOps, that's ADO, through the integration with Rommana software. My name is Magdi Hanna, and I am the Chief Technology Officer and Product Manager of Rommana ALM. So I will share with you how the integration works and also what kind of ALM functionality you can get for your ADO project. As we all know, ADO is a very known sort of project management. I don't want to say ALM software because it does not really provide all the ALM functionality. That's why we decided to do the integration between ADO and Rommana ALM. Rommana ALM is a complete ALM system, which can help you do everything you can imagine in your project and your systems in general. All right, let me start with this picture, which shows everything that is supported through Rommana ALM. That has nothing to do really with ADO. Rommana ALM is a complete web-based application that you can subscribe to. It has a repository that is mainly a SQL Server database, and through that you can do everything you can imagine. You can have complete functionality of project management, much more what is supported in Microsoft Project. You can do complete requirement and user story management through Rommana ALM. Related to the user story management, there is also the change management, which allows you to maintain different versions of the user story when user stories change over time. There's a complete functionality of test management where you can design and you can maintain your test suites, and you can run your test suites and get a complete reporting from that. There's complete functionality of document management, where you can maintain your documents. You can get your documents reviewed and approved and everything. You can associate those documents with user stories or not. Certainly, if your project is using use cases, then there's a complete support of use case functionality here. There is a huge collaboration component in Rommana ALM where all project teams can collaborate and review things and approve things and ask questions and so on. That's a collaboration management component. Rommana ALM also integrates with Jira if you're doing your test management through ALM, Rommana ALM, and say you ran test cases and test cases failed. Although you can always create your bug reports in the issue management component of Rommana ALM, you can also, if you want, you can create your bug reports in Jira and maintain them in Jira. And the same kind of integration is happening with Bugzilla as well. And we only did these two integrations because we had some customers of Rommana ALM who were already using Jira bug tracking or Bugzilla bug tracking. So they wanted to maintain their bug reports within these tools. Let's not forget that also Rommana ALM has an app that's available for Jira. It's called Rommana ALM for Jira, and it is available in the Atlassian marketplace. As we speak, we are also finalizing our ADO, or actually Rommana ALM app for ADO, where where you can access that app from within your ADO and access the Rommana ALM functionality. However, what I'm talking about today is not the Rommana ALM app for ADO. I am talking about the full integration we have with ADO, which means what you do here is you actually use Rommana ALM to manage your ADO projects. All right. And once you synchronize your ADO projects with Rommana ALM, then you can do all these functionalities from within Rommana ALM. You can of course, go back and forth between Rommana ALM and your ADO. So once you synchronize your project from ADO to Rommana ALM, and again, one more time, this happens from within Rommana ALM. It does not happen from within ADO. So you actually have to have a license of Rommana ALM in order to do that. It's simply extending or allowing you to synchronize your ADO projects, bring them into Rommana ALM to do all the kind of things that Rommana ALM allows you to do that ADO does not allow you to do. And I just put a brief list of the kind of things you can do with your projects, with your ADO projects from within Rommana ALM. You can do scenario-based development and testing. We're going to talk about this in more details. Your development team, if they're interested to do test-driven development, they can actually do test-driven development based on scenarios, because scenarios are a big thing within Rommana ALM. In Rommana ALM, we have the huge thing about feature-based project management, which is very different from what Microsoft Project does, which I refer to as task-oriented project management. You can enjoy the full feature-based project management functionality for your ADO projects from within Rommana ALM. Certainly, you can manage, in addition to typical user stories, you can manage what we call non-functional user stories or non-functional requirements within Rommana ALM. Typically, you cannot do this in ADO or even Jira. Now, because Rommana ALM allows you to do the scenario-based development and testing, it allows you also to do a very fine form of risk-based testing using scenarios. So you can decide on which scenarios are more important than others, which scenarios are going to be tested, which scenarios are not going to be tested, or otherwise you can decide which scenarios will be tested using formal testing methods versus other scenarios that will be tested using ad hoc or informal testing methods. Certainly, your test team can do a lot of exploratory testing within Rommana ALM for your ADO projects. Issue management or bug tracking, whatever you want to call it, is a big thing within Rommana ALM. However, you can continue to do your bug tracking in ADO if you wish. So when you have a test that fails, you can write your bug report within Rommana ALM, or you can write your bug report within ADO. Acceptance criteria for user stories are treated very differently in Rommana ALM from the way it is handled in ADO. In ADO, you can simply list your acceptance criteria. However, in Rommana ALM, every single acceptance criteria is tested. You can test it. You can have the result, whether pass or fail of the acceptance criteria. We're going to see in a little bit. Change management and versioning is a big thing because, as we know, things do not remain as is for too long. User stories, it changes. Features, it changes. Epics change over time. And we want to make sure to be able to create or maintain a different version of the user story or the feature or the epic. That's why you can use the versioning and the changing management from Rommana ALM to maintain different versions of your features or epics or user stories in your ADO projects. As I said, if your project is using use cases, which I'm not going to be able to explain in this presentation, you can do a full support of use cases from within Rommana ALM. When you log into your Rommana ALM license, it'll allow you actually to log in using ADO functionality. Okay. And if you were to use ADO functionality, ADO credentials, I don't know why I said functionality, forgive me. It will allow you to log into Rommana ALM using your ADO credentials. And if you do that, it will list for you all the organizations and all the projects within those organizations within ADO. And it allows you also to synchronize any of those projects with Rommana ALM. Keep in mind, this is not importing, exporting. So data or project data does not move from your ADO to Rommana ALM. It does not move at all. It simply gets synchronized. Okay. My apology. I get to mute my microphone every once in a while to clear my voice. So it is not import export. So you don't move your project data to Rommana ALM and move them back to ADO. Absolutely not. Your project data, your epics, features, and user stories will remain in ADO. And the only thing we do is synchronize them in Rommana ALM. You do all the kind of wonderful things within Rommana ALM, and you can go back to your ADO and continue to work with your project there. So you only work inside Rommana ALM when you are doing the functionalities that are not available to you through the plain ADO. I hope I explained this well. So here is the synchronization happen. Epics and features and user stories and the bugs are synchronized when they come to Rommana ALM. Rommana ALM does not have those entities, the epics and features, user stories, but it has everything in Rommana ALM is a user stories. However, user stories are maintained in a hierarchy, in a tree, if you will. So we take the epics from ADO and synchronize them with a level 1 user stories or a level 1 requirements. So the features which are typically below the epics are synchronized and become a level 2 user story or requirement. So I'll show you the picture in a little bit. User stories, which are typically a child of a feature, because as you probably know, if you are using ADO, that's the hierarchy within ADO. It's epics, the highest level, features are below epics, and then user stories are below features. We maintain this kind of hierarchy here. And of course, bugs within ADO are created as issues within Rommana ALM. And as I said, the parent-child relationship between epics, features, user stories are maintained here. Okay. So once you synchronize a project, your ADO project with Rommana ALM, then you start opening your Rommana ALM project or your ADO project. You open it within Rommana ALM. This is the screen you see. Of course, I mean, you see other screens, but if you click on user stories within Rommana ALM, it'll show you all your user stories. However, as you can see, user stories are maintained in the form of a hierarchy. Your epics, your features, and your user stories are here. So you can visually see the relationship between your epics. So here you have three epics, and below that, sorry, three epics, and below that you have, below this one, you have features, and then you have user stories down here. All right, so sorry, so let me go back here. And if you click on this plus sign, of course, I just got you a static screen instead of trying to run the system while I'm doing the webinar. If this user story, so as you can see here, a user story in Rommana ALM is allowed to have children of its own. So you can click on this plus sign, it'll expand for you the children of this specific user story. This one and this one, this user story and this user story do not have children, as you can see. All right. If you click on any one of those user stories, which it could be, as I said, an epic or a feature or a user story in ADO, you start getting the more details about the user story. So within Rommana ALM, we're going to refer to everything as a user story, and we know that user stories exist on different levels. Okay, to mimic the relationship between epics, features, and user stories in EDO. So this is, by the way, this is not the whole screen. I had to split the screen over 2 slides because I could not get the whole screen fit on one slide. So this is kind of the first half, the upper half of the user story screen. It shows you the user story description. It shows you the acceptance criteria. And by the way, if you already have a user story in ADO and you already defined the acceptance criteria there, during the synchronization process, it'll bring for you those acceptance criteria from ADO and list them here. However, as you can tell, as you can see here, it lists them differently because now each user story can be tested or not. Sorry, each acceptance criteria can be tested or not, and it shows the result of testing, whether it's passed or failed. As you remember, if from your using of your ADO, an acceptance criteria is just listed there. So you have a user story, you list a number of acceptance criteria, and then nothing happened to them after that. If you were to test every acceptance criteria, you have to do this offline, and the testing of acceptance criteria and the results does not even documented within ADO. So that's why in Rommana ALM we maintain the status of each acceptance criteria. So if you want to do what we call acceptance criteria testing, you can test your acceptance criteria, but that's not the only kind of testing you do in Rommana ALM. You do a lot of other testing. Let me see, and of course you have the other parameters here. Some of these things are imported, or I should not have said imported, are synchronized with your data from ADO, and some of them are not. Like for example, I believe created by is not available in ADO. Time criticality is synchronized with your ADO. So there are certain all the attributes of a user story within your ADO are brought in here. In addition, a user story within Rommana ALM has more attributes. And for example, here we have an attribute called iteration. Okay, and iteration is a sprint where the user story is scheduled for, and so on. I believe the state and the reason are one of the things that are brought from ADO, and so on. I'm not going to get into the details, but all what I'm going to say is that some of these attributes are brought in from ADO, and some of them are are within Rommana ALM. There's a number of things here you can see. If you click on any one of those icons, it gives you. So it gives you the details of these things. For example, here you can see all the tasks associated with this user story. Here you can see all the issues associated with user stories. As we said, because we're going to have, let me see if the second screen has more details. Yeah, it has the remaining of the stuff, which you cannot see it here. Maybe some of it. So, okay, yep, there's some stuff here that's not in the second screen. So a user story can have tasks, risks, and actions associated with them. A user story also can have scenarios associated with them. They can have ad hoc or exploratory or informal test cases associated with the user story. All the test sets associated with the user story will be here. If you are interested to look at the parent user story or the parent feature or epic of this user story, you can click here. You can click here to see all the children and so on. Because you remember, this screen here we're looking at, which shows the details of the user story, does not really show the children and the parents. Okay, so as a result, really, we allow you to, we give you a chance if you want to see what is the parent of this user story, you click on this. If you want to see what other children are here. But of course, from the previous screen, which shows the hierarchy, you can see the children and the parent more visually. Of course, document management is in Rommana ALM. You can maintain documents here and models, and those are the ones that are associated with this user story. A number of other things. You can create some custom attributes for user story within Rommana ALM. Custom attributes appear here. If you have written some use cases for this user story, they are here, and so on. Let me move to the next screen because I still have a lot of material to cover. Of course, on this screen, because it does not have much details, I was able to zoom on it a little bit. As I said here, you can see on this screen there are numbers here. So the numbers represent the number of things that are associated with the user story. So the user story we're looking at has 24 scenarios. Please don't mind that here. I'm sorry. Here it showed only one scenario. It's probably the screenshots were taken at different times. So here it shows that clearly, shows that this user story had 24 scenarios, had 24 ad hoc tests, had 2 test sets. It has 2 custom attributes, it has 4 tasks and 1 risk, and so on. And you click on any one of those. I didn't want to do the live demo of Rommana ALM here because I did not want to get carried away with Rommana ALM. The purpose of this webinar is not really to show you the details of Rommana ALM as much as it shows you the integration between Rommana ALM and the ADO. I have other webinars recorded there on the Rommana website that shows you, if I were to click here, for example, or click on the scenarios, what kind of details you see on each scenario and so on. Scenarios are very unique to Rommana ALM, as you know. They don't exist in any other tool out there, not ADO, not Jira, and so on. If you're interested to look at the bug reports or the issues that were created for the specific user story we are looking at, you click on this icon here, it shows you the 7 issues created. There is 1 document associated with this user story. There is 1 risk, and risks in user story are the kind of things I'm going to just quick here get into what we call the feature-based project management. Risks in Rommana ALM means that anything that could possibly happen that could hinder us from delivering the user story as it is scheduled for the specific sprint. It could be almost anything. So the project management manager or the agile coach or the or the Scrum Master can go and list that risk there so that we can keep an eye on the risk. There are, of course, there are certain tasks to be performed in order to complete the user story, and these tasks are listed here as well. This user story we are looking at has undergone in 6 different changes over time. Now, I need to tell you that the history is different from the versions, because I talked about change management and versions, and we can maintain different versions of a user story or an epic or a feature. That those versions are different from the history. And the history shows you the changes that happened in the user story while we are still working on it. Once the status of the user story changes to what we call baselined or implemented, and this is only unique to Rommana ALM. And remember, ADO does not allow you to baseline a user story, which means a user story can remain to be changing anytime. Well, theoretically speaking, in agile projects, yes, we say you can change things anytime, but practically you cannot do that. If the development team had already taken the user story, had worked on it, and the test team had already taken the user story, created test cases, I think at some point of time you would want to say, no, we cannot make changes to this user story anymore, because it would simply interrupt our work in the current sprint. But you can certainly create a new version. So all the changes that happen to the user story before it gets baselined, they are here. However, once you change the status of the user story to baselined or implemented, if the user story has already been finished and completed and put out in a release or in a sprint, well, you cannot make changes to it. You can now baseline it, or it would be baselined because of the status, and now you can create new versions of. That's why we have here versions. So if right now this user story does not have any versions, if we created a new version, then they would be here. All right, move on. By the way, while I'm talking, if you have any question at all, feel free to go ahead and click the questions tab and write your question there, and I'm going to peek into that question tab while I'm talking to answer your questions, okay? But please feel free to ask your questions, because I understand I'm giving lots of details, and you may have some questions as I'm going through these details. All right, let's talk about scenario-based development and testing in Rommana ALM, which you can do for your ADO, epics, and features and stories. Okay, again, one more time. You cannot do this within ADO. This is one of the Rommana ALM features, which you can do only within Rommana ALM after you sync your project. All right. So briefly here, I'm giving you a brief tutorial on scenario-based development testing. If you're interested really in the details of how it works and the benefits and so on, you can go to the Rommana Software website, rommanasoftware.com, and there is a number of recorded webinars there, and a couple of them speak about the scenario-based development and testing. But let me at least share with you how they work. You have your epic or a feature or a user story here that were synchronized with from your ADO. So within Rommana ALM, you can start creating scenarios. So scenarios, as I say here, are any condition or any situation or action or anything at all that can happen in production while this specific user story is being executed. So whatever it is. So if the user story is about paying for an order, great. While paying for an order, what could possibly happen? There is a number of things that could happen we need to capture. There is the fact that the credit card could be declined. There is the fact that the person can get disconnected from the internet while they're trying to pay for their order. There is the credit card processing system might be down, in which case really would affect. There's a number of things that could happen, whether they are normal or abnormal. Keep in mind, as I say here, scenarios can be positive scenarios, which are normal events, normal course of actions, or they can be negative. We kind of classify scenarios to either positive or negative. The negative scenarios are abnormal, extreme scenarios that have to do with invalid data. And keep in mind, those scenarios, the negative, especially the negative scenarios, are the ones we're going to be using a lot for negative testing, because we do positive testing, we do negative testing. Of course, all the positive scenarios that represent normal course of actions are going to be used for positive testing. But again, all the other negative scenarios, which I tell people all the time, when you build your scenarios for a user story, make sure you have the number of positive scenarios and number of negative scenarios are at least 50-50. You cannot just undermine the value of negative scenarios. So once you build your scenarios, positive or negative, then you start doing a number of things. You can take each scenario and start building some formal test cases. And if you build the formal test cases, you can group those test cases into test sets. And so each test set really consists of a number of test cases. And then once you have a test set, you can start writing your scripts, whether automated scripts or manual scripts, okay? So this is, if they are automated scripts, then you are going to be doing you're running those scripts through one of the test tools available, and Rommana ALM integrates with QTP and Selenium, and we're working on integrating with other tools. As I said, we're going to do some risk-based testing, in which case we're going to decide that some of those scenarios are not as important. They're not so important that so we do not want to take the time to do formal test cases. So we go and do what we call exploratory test cases. So exploratory test cases in Rommana ALM is also a scenario-based. You got to understand that, because when you do exploratory testing, you've got to have at least a scenario that you want to test. Of course, you can do the other kind of exploratory testing, which I refer to as ad hoc exploratory testing, in which a tester will just sit down and they play with the user interface and they try things here and there, and that's okay. You can do this, but at the end, you're still going to have to document what you've been testing. But you could also do exploratory testing based on those scenarios. If your development team is interested in doing what we call test-driven development, I'm modifying here the test-driven development to be done based on scenarios, because in a typical test-driven development, a developer will take the user story and start writing test cases for the user story, and based on those test cases, they start writing the code. So it's kind of reversed logic here. So in Rommana ALM, being the chief architect of Rommana ALM, I found it to be very useful not to build not for developers to build their test cases based on the user stories, because user stories are still vague, incomplete, missing a lot of details. So rather than doing that, they take the user story, they take the scenarios that have been built by the QA team and have been validated by the development team, and they write their test cases for test-driven development based on those scenarios. I refer to this as scenario-based test-driven development, not just a test-driven development. And when they write their test cases, they can now write the code, okay? This text here explains everything I've said, so I'm not going to go through it. So just quickly, why scenario-based development and testing? Why am I bothering you with doing scenario-based development and testing in Rommana ALM for your epics, features, and user stories? Because through my 40 years experience in software engineering, I found that scenario-based development and testing is we try to we try to do the highest level of requirement coverage or user story coverage. We try everything we can. Remember, requirement coverage or user story coverage is about how much of the user story have you tested. In a different way, how deep did the test team test the user story? Okay, and you can try anything you want. I have not seen in my experience anything better than scenario-based development and testing. So when you build the scenarios, positive and negative, that guarantees the highest level of user story coverage. Now, many companies who tried scenario-based development and testing have actually reported to me that scenario-based development and testing have helped them reduce the number of bug reports written by their test team. Not just the number of bug reports found by the customer, the number of bug reports written by the test team, which means when they do scenario-based development and testing, they found that the test team is not finding as many bugs as before. One of the companies, Wells Fargo, I remember they reported to me that the lady, the director of system integration there said they were able to reduce the number of tickets. I mean, that's how they refer to them, the number of tickets by more than 70%. When you hear that, you say, okay, let me see how scenarios work. Now, of course, all these things I'm talking about, you can listen to them. I have a different webinar that's called Scenario-Based Development and Testing. You can listen to the recording on the Rommana software website. A number of things here. We do the risk-based testing based on scenarios. Scenarios are good for Agile or non-Agile. If you want to use scenarios for a non-Agile project, you could do that. But again, in my own experience, I found that always there is a big gap between what testers are testing and what developers are writing. This is very important, guys. This is very, very important because I've been involved in a number of projects in my professional life where I found the code coverage is very low, which means the amount of code tested by the testing team is very low, which means we put out releases with lots of code that has not been tested. And I found that the solution, or actually, I came up with the idea of scenario-based development and testing in the mid-90s based on my experience with one of those projects. And I found, I said to myself, what do we do to maximize code coverage? And I found that code coverage scenario-based development testing is a very powerful way to close that gap between the way developers think and the way testers think. Okay, I'm not going to spend more time on this. As I said, if you need more details about scenario-based development and testing, please go to the Rommana software website and listen to the scenario. All right. Once you synchronize, this is now how to work with issues. As we know, ADO allows you to create bug reports. Okay, that's fine. If you want to create your bug reports within ADO, you can continue to do that and then ignore this slide here. This slide is simply showing you how you can create your bug reports within Rommana ALM and why would you do that? Remember, okay, here we said in Rommana ALM, we create scenarios, we create formal test cases, or we create exploratory tests, either way. Now, potentially one or more of those test cases or the exploratory tests will fail. And when they fail, we can create issue reports. So you can create issue reports within Rommana ALM for an exploratory test, or you can create an issue report for a formal test case within Rommana ALM here. Or you can actually create an issue report for an epic or a feature of the user story directly without having a test. I mean, of course, that's not the best practice, but I've seen people doing it, and actually ADO allows you to do it. ADO allows you to put your hand on a user story and go and create an issue report. I say to myself, issue for what? What, did we test anything? Well, ADO says, just in case, if you feel you want to write a bug report for a user story without doing any testing, you can do that. Well, guess what? We decided to allow you to do the same within Rommana ALM so that you are not missing anything, which means if you maintain your bug reports as issues within Rommana ALM, you can create your bug reports for formal test cases, for exploratory test cases, and you can also create them for epics or features or user stories without doing any testing if that's what you want to do. Okay, very quick. I'm sorry, I'm going fast because I have so much material to cover. Okay, I have a question here that says, okay, what happens to the bug reports that were already created in ADO? Well, as I said earlier, all the bug reports that were created in ADO will be brought into Rommana ALM, so you're not losing those. So once you sync your project with Rommana ALM, then all those entities have been brought in. Again, the brought in is the wrong term, because when I say brought in, you might think that they have been imported. No, they have been synchronized, which means your bug reports are in ADO, but they're also in Rommana ALM. In fact, if you go to Rommana ALM and make a change to one of the bug reports, you can see the change immediately in your ADO. So your bug reports are available to you within Rommana ALM. So you're not losing those. In addition to those bug reports that you had created in ADO, you can also create bug reports inside Rommana ALM for your test cases and exploratory tests. Okay, I hope I answered your question. So how do we do risk-based testing through scenarios in Rommana ALM? Once you create scenarios, okay, what the screen or the screen image you're looking at here is just taken from Rommana ALM. This is a list of scenarios. Remember when I said you can click on the number of scenarios? Here, I'm going to go back quick. Remember this screen here? When I said, if you click on this icon, you'll see a list of scenarios created for that specific user story. Okay, well, that is the list I'm talking about here. This is the first screen of the 24 scenarios. So now when you see the list of scenarios, here's a scenario number, which is a link, as you can tell here. If you click on the scenario number, it takes you to another screen that gives you the scenario details. This is only a list of all scenarios, but certainly every scenario has much more details. So every scenario has a name or a title, has a description. It has also those three parameters. Frequency of occurrence, this is the, how often do we think the scenario is going to happen, the impact of failure or the consequences of failure, what would happen if that scenario would to fail in production, and there is a probability of failure. Again, one more time, I'm not going to be able to spend much time here because that's explained in more details in the webinar on scenario-based development and testing. So please go ahead and look at this webinar if you would like to. Based on these three parameters, we calculate within Rommana ALM, we calculate a testing priority. And the testing priority is always going to be a number between 1.0 and 3.0. Okay, how do we calculate it? I can tell you quickly. High is 3. Medium is 2, low is 1. We add them up, we divide by 3. So this number here is mainly the average. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 divided by 3 is 3.0. Here, for example, 3 plus 3 plus 1, that is 7 divided by 3, it gives you this number. So this is the testing priority. Based on the testing priority, you determine whether you are going to test this scenario formally by creating a formal test script and a formal test case and a test script and automation, all that good stuff, or that scenario has a low priority that you can test informally using exploratory testing. And that's why, if you remember, I'm going to go back here to those scenarios that have lower priority. Go here and we write an exploratory test case for them. And keep in mind also, you can actually write an exploratory test case for a user or you can write exploratory test cases for epics or user stories. So you don't even have to write scenarios in order to do exploratory test cases. All right. So that is scenario-based, risk-based testing. You see how it is? People talk about risk-based testing, and I say it's a really risk-based testing based on scenarios. All right, and of course, there is a huge benefit of doing risk-based testing through scenarios, and I cover this in my other webinar because I hate it when people do risk-based testing based on test cases, because I don't want to wait until I create test cases and then decide which test case is more important than another. That does not make any sense, because I already spent the time writing the test cases. So bringing a scenario in between the user story and the test cases makes it very easy to do risk-based testing early and decide early on the scenario level. Let's go on. Testable acceptance criteria. As I said earlier, acceptance criteria within Rommana ALM are tested. So this is a simple thing. So every acceptance criteria you can mark it as tested, and if you test it, you can say pass or fail. Or if it has not been tested yet, then you don't click this box, and that's it. So at least it will be documented within the user story which acceptance criteria have been tested and which ones have been not, and how many of those passed, how many of those failed. All right, let's talk about change requests and versioning of epics features and user stories. As I said earlier, if the user story is still under development, you can make as many changes as you want. My apology. And those changes will be reflected in the history of the user story. However, at some point, as I said, if you baseline the user story, any changes after that needs to happen through the typical, the very well-known mechanism we call change request. So Scrum Master, a product owner, whoever is running the project can create a change request. So that's why I'm going to go back, believe it or not, I'm going to go back all the way to the very first screen in Rommana ALM to show you where change requests are. Right here. These are the user stories, and the change requests are here. If you click here, it'll show you all the change requests within this project. So let me go forward. So what is a change request? Change request is an entity that's created by someone who says, we need to make a change to a user story after it has already been freezed or baselined or even implemented and released in a sprint or a release. So what do? We don't create another user story. We create a change request. Those of you who have been in software development and software engineering for a longer time, you know the concept of a change request. Unfortunately, the concept does not exist in Agile projects. I mean, for some reason, someone thought that in Agile, we can change anything anytime. Well, as I said, theoretically speaking, yes. Practically, not. You cannot change anything anytime. So we have to go back to our senses, go back to our common sense, engineering sense, and say, if we need to make a change to a user story after the fact, then we need to create a change request. I have not seen almost any Agile project. Of course, I can't claim that I've seen all the Agile projects, but in the hundreds of Agile projects that I have seen, no one creates a change request. And I wonder, how do we make a change to a user story that has already been implemented in a release or a sprint? We create another user story, I think. Well, what if we don't want to create another user story? What if the change we are trying to make is a minor change to an existing user story? Okay, So the concept of the change request is there, has been there in software engineering for years, and we don't forget that. So we go and create a change request. At some point of time, that change request needs to be reviewed by someone. And all those things are happening in Rommana ALM. And then once they get reviewed, at some point, they have to be approved. We don't just write a change request and make the change, unless you're working on a small project that has 3-4 people, and the product owner go and write a change request. The guys go ahead and implement that. But again, if we have customers and the customers have a saying in what we're doing, then they have to look at the change request. They have to agree on the change request. Once a change request is approved, that's why we start from an approved change request. Once it is approved within Rommana ALM, now you can use it to do one of two things. When you look, when a product owner or a scrum master or a project manager, whoever, when they look at the change request, they might say, well, this actually is a minor change to an existing epic or a feature or a user story. So let's create a new version of that feature or user story. Or the change is very different. It is actually a user story that's stand alone in its right. It's not really related to any existing user story. So that's fine. We take that change request and we create a new user story or feature or an epic based on that approved change request. Now, this process, which we refer to as change management through the concept of a change request, is not supported anywhere in any agile project management or user story management tool. Not in Jira, not in ADO, not in anything. Why? Because somehow Agile does not believe in change requests. Agile does not believe in change management, which is very wrong. I'm going to tell you that. Again, please understand, I am not generalizing. I'm reporting on my own experience. There might be someone out there who's running a decent agile project who's willing to say, no, Magdi, you are wrong. I am running a project where we use a change request, we approve it, and we do it the same way. Sure, I would very much appreciate that. Except I am not aware that Jira or ADO or any other agile tool supports that concept. Okay, let's move on because I don't have much time left. Use cases. Use cases are different animals, different from features, user stories, or epics. Okay, use cases are much more elaborate. In a nutshell, just to give you in the first bullet, the definition of a use case. It describes its interactions between different parts of the system. Just a quick example. If I am placing an order online, I interact with the system. The system interacts with the inventory system. The system interacts with the credit card processing system. The system might interact with the loyalty system to see if I get discount or not, and so on. So if we have a functionality out there through which the system will need to interact with other systems and subsystems, then use case would be the best way to do it. I'm not going to elaborate on this. So as you can see from the picture, within Rommana ALM, once you synchronize your epic features or user stories, you can create use cases. And now, interestingly enough, within use cases, you can create what we call use case scenarios. And those can be used the same way the other scenarios we talked about are used. You can create formal test cases. You can create exploratory test cases. Okay. Moving towards feature-based project management. Okay. Now another one. So actually, I'm going to tell you this. Okay. This is tasks, risks, and actions for epics and features and user stories are part of the feature-based project management within Rommana ALM. And the only thing I'm going to tell you here, for an epic or a feature or user story within Rommana ALM, you can attach tasks, you can attach risks or actions. As I said earlier, risks are those things that may cause us not to be able to deliver the feature or the user story as we promised. And we keep track of those risks, we monitor them throughout the sprint, and we make sure that if they happen, we mitigate them and so on. Actions are things that must be done in order to implement or complete the user stories. They are more than, they are actually, they are the kind of things you put in an action item list. Like if someone has to investigate a third-party component to help us implement this user story, then this action is listed here. If we have to build a small piece of software or a program that simulates functionality that's not available yet, and we need that functionality in order to complete the user story, then that would be here. These are things we need to do more and beyond the tasks that need to be performed. The tasks here are the typical project tasks, like reviewing the user story, writing the code, writing the design, designing the user interface, writing test cases, running the test cases. These are the kind of tasks. So you can write tasks here. So at any point of time, you look at, if you remember here, I'm going to go back to initial screen that I showed you before. Here, tasks are here, risks are here, and actions are here. It just happened that this specific user story we're looking at did not have any of those defined yet. Okay, so further. One more. I still have a lot of details, by the way. And of course, tasks are assigned to people, tasks have certain date of completion, and so on. Now, defining non-functional requirements, whether they are epics or user stories or features. Okay, very simple. This is the requirement tree or the user story tree that you saw before initially. Okay, except I'm not showing you here the epics and the features of user stories. So here are the first type. So here we have different types of user stories or requirements. We have the functional, then we have the non-functional below that. I mean, non-functional requirements, which I don't like the term non-functional because non-functional means it's not working. So I refer to those that people call non-functional with their own categories. We have quality requirements, we have hardware requirements, we have regulations, we have system requirements, we have marketing requirements, we have design requirements, and those are all different from the functional requirements. That's the only thing I'm going to say. And those types, we call those in Rommana ALM requirement categories or user story categories. We have the functionality, then we have everything else. They are treated seamlessly the same way functional requirements. So you can write test cases for them, you can write scenarios for them and everything. All right. We'll skip. In Rommana ALM, you can establish the mapping between your epics, features, and user stories and between business functions. So if you have defined your business functions, here that are the columns. Here are your user stories on the left, and you can click and unclick here to establish mapping. So which means this user story here is serving 3 different business functions. Okay, this user story here is serving only 1 business function, and so on. So if it is important to you to relate your user stories to what business functions it is the user story is supporting, you can do that. It's a many-to-many relationship. Going further into feature-based project management, what you're looking at is an actual timeline screen or timeline report in Rommana ALM. Here your user stories on the left, and here is the different tasks. Remember we said a user story will have a number of tasks. Now each task has certain duration. It has certain number. It has been assigned to people. If you click on the task, it shows you who is assigned to this task and how far it is and so on. That's really a timeline very different from what you see in Microsoft Project Manager, Microsoft Project, because as you know, in Microsoft Project, they don't have the tasks. Actually, they have the tasks, but they don't have the user stories. So now we have the tasks, we have the user stories, we can do that. All right, this is another report, very quick. I'll be finishing soon. This is what I call a test coverage report. This is an actual report from Rommana ALM, which shows you all your user stories or epics or features, whatever you want. And for each one of them, it's showing you the number of test cases that have been written, showing you how many of those are formal. I call them systematic here, or exploratory. I call them ad hoc here. So how many passed, how many failed, how many have not been executed yet? How many have been blocked, meaning that we cannot execute them for one reason or another? Of course, I can talk about this report for a half hour, but this is one of the reports you can get out of Rommana ALM for your user stories for the test cases that were written, okay? And of course, everything in the Rommana reports is links. So if you were to click anywhere here, if you click on this red slice of the pie, it will show you those test cases that failed. If those are the ones that have not been executed yet, if you click on the blue slice, it'll show you because someone would like to know why those test cases, it's about 4.44% of the test cases have not been executed yet. You can click on that and you can see them. In fact, you can see the same detailed data here. All right. The last two columns are very important, in my opinion, when you are managing a project in Rommana ALM, or you're managing the testing effort of a project in Rommana ALM. It shows you the readiness percentage, how ready the user story is. This user story is only 33% ready. And why is that? Because we had 3 test cases, only one of them passed, 2 of them failed. So obviously, we calculate this based on the number of passes and so on. This one here has 100% readiness. Because it had 1 test case, it was executed, and it passed. 24 test cases. All right. Remove this here. 24 test cases. 20 of them passed. 3 of them failed. Based on those 20, it's 83% ready. The completeness percentage is about how many of the test cases have been executed, regardless of passed or failed. So you can see a lot of 100% here. Like even if this user story is only 33% pass, because of the 33% ready, it's 100% complete because we executed all the test cases. All right. There's so much details into this report. More reports shows you the cost estimation by user story. Then we move to document management. Again, here this is a document screen that shows you the document, but it also shows you, as I said, in document management you can just maintain documents as a standalone in Rommana ALM, or you can associate them with specific user stories. This specific document we're looking at, which is called the initial functional specs, is associated with 2 user stories here. Okay, so you kind of choose. If at some point of time I believe that no, this user story is not served by this document, I can bring it back here. This is all your user stories. You expand them, you move them back and forth. Okay, this is how you assign documents to user story. This is the last screen I am going to show you, and this is the reports screen. These are all the reports within Rommana ALM. There is a test management reports, there is user stories management reports, there is project management reports, and there's also the custom reports you can build of your own. and you can save them. If you have created any custom reports, they would be here. You would be listed here. So Rommana ALM provides a very rich set of reports that you can report on anything. Those reports are not available in ADO or Jira or anywhere else, simply because those tools do not allow you to do the kind of things that you do in Rommana ALM. And please keep in mind, I'm never suggesting that Rommana ALM will replace ADO or Rommana ALM will replace Jira. Absolutely not, because Jira and Rommana and ADO, they allow you to do a lot of good things that Rommana ALM does not allow you to do. So it's important to know that. Jira and ADO are good agile project management tools, if that's all what you want to do. If you want to do some additional ALM functionality, that's when you use this integration with ADO. I am going to suggest that if you are interested in this functionality, I want you to go to the Rommana ALM website. You can download free trial for 60 days for up to 3 people, or you can get small package, because this functionality I explained at this webinar is available in any one of those packages. So this first package is just the user stories and requirements, change management, collaboration, and so on. So everything. So I talked about it here. Or you can get the requirement management or user story management along with the testing management. The prices are still very low. I mean, $10 per month per user per month. But just to try the free trial for 60 days so that you can see how you can enjoy all this functionality from within ADO. When you get the free trial, when you log in, make sure you log in using your ADO credentials. Okay. I am going to do another webinar coming on October 13. That's extending Jira. If you're using Jira, that's extending Jira Cloud to support user stories. I gave a webinar 2 weeks ago to show how you do scenario-based development and testing in Jira. I am going to give another webinar to show how to do user story versioning and the change management, and much more than that on October 13. If you're interested, please go to your to Rommana ALM website to register for this webinar. But here are the packages. Thank you so much for being with me during this webinar. And I will leave you with that. Hopefully I will see you in other webinars, and hopefully you will also get the opportunity to try Rommana ALM for free, so that you can see how you can use all the functionalities from within ADO. If you don't have ADO license, then that's fine. Just to try Rommana ALM for free. All the functionalities I talked about are available in Rommana ALM, but they're also available in ADO if you log using your ADO credentials. Again, thank you one more time for being with me during this webinar.